Hello, everyone, and welcome to the virtual Google Talks. I am your moderator, Lindawi Davis, and today we're talking to an amazing author. She is the author of a book called Black Widow, a sad journey through grief for people who normally avoid books with words like journey in the title. Just to give you a little bit of insight here, the author's name is Leslie Gray Streeter. She's a veteran journalist and dynamite author. And a direct quote here is, "Black Widow is for anyone who has lost someone. Although grief is universal, Leslie realized there wasn't anyone reflecting a Black voice in this space when she lost her husband unexpectedly." So today we're going to get into a beautiful chat around grief, around the book, love, loss, recovering. And for everyone that's tuning into the live stream, just a quick housekeeping note here. You can actually drop your questions or comments inside of the live stream. And we're so looking forward to all of the energy that we're going to be generating from this talk. And we hope you all enjoy it. And with that, let's welcome Leslie Gray Streeter.
Hi.
Hi, Leslie.
How are you?
I am wonderful. It's nice to see your face.
Thank you. It's nice to be seen when you're in the house all the time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I see you, human. Yeah.
As I was saying before we started here, I'm loving this purple. It's such a wonderful color, and hopefully everyone can kind of feel that light and radiance there.
Oh, I love it. Having like a full face like on of makeup is like not a thing that I've done a lot in the last 8 to 10 weeks, but I'm really happy. And all the makeup that I bought hoping I was going on tour and stuff was like, so now I can actually use it. I got these earrings for this. I got this. It's a whole situation. So now I can actually justify the money I spent on it. Listen,
I like it. You got to treat yourself. Don't cheat yourself. A friend of mine tells me that all the time. So I am with it for sure. You know, Leslie, I kind of wanted to start us off just by you giving us a brief summary of what this book is about and why you felt compelled to kind of share this excavation of grief with everyone.
Excellent. The book is a memoir. It's about the first year of my widowhood in 2015. From 2015 to 2016, my husband died in 2015. And it just literally follows almost exactly the first year of sort of my what the. And then the sort of the stages of grief, which are not, they don't run concurrent. They kind of slap you in the face and run all around the place. And it's sort of my going through that and then sort of trying to reestablish what life looked like as a single parent. I was finishing the adoption of our child by myself unexpectedly, moving in with my mother when we moved in together, and having a co-parent, and just sort of figuring out what it was to be this widow word that no one ever expects or certainly doesn't ever want to have described them, but I did. And so that's what the book is about. But it's also funny. I would pitch it to people and they would go, "Oh no, it sounds really depressing." I go, "Yeah, but it's funny." And they go,
right.
Like, is it like nothing against Tyler Perry, but is it like, I think they were imagining like, a Medea thing where people were like, crying and jumping in the casket and that kind of thing. And certainly we had that in my family, but not at this particular funeral. So it was more like I process things humorously, sometimes inappropriately. And it just I just wrote it. And I didn't think about, is this appropriate? Or I just wanted it to make sense to me and then hope that it would make sense to other people. And that's sort of what happened.
Absolutely. I think the great thing about something key that you just said here is, appropriate, right? What's appropriate, what's not appropriate. And obviously when it comes to grief, the 5 stages of grief, there's no linear kind of line that you go through these things. And you and I were just briefly talking about this before we jumped on, but I went through my own tragedy about 16 years ago when it came to my mom passing. And this book was really was therapy with just bits of laughter. And so I really want you to kind of touch on what you couldn't say. What can you say about yourself now and what you learned that you couldn't say to yourself at that time that this tragedy happened?
I can say now that I know that you get through it. My uncle, when my grandfather died, he said, you don't get past it, but you do get through it. Meaning there's not something where you go, I'm completely over it and it'll never bother me again. And I'll never hear the wrong song or see the wrong Hallmark commercial and sob, because it takes you right back there to that moment. That's going to happen, but you will continue your life and maybe build blocks to a new one. And I said in the beginning, I knew that had to happen because I had no choice but now I really know that it can. I kind of, you say that like, I'm gonna finish this, I'm gonna finish this diet, and then you don't finish the diet. Things like that are, I'm gonna run as fast as I can in this 5K. You're kind of like walking through at the end of it. But I knew I had to. I just hoped that I believed it. And there were moments where I was like, you are full of it. There's no way, or you'll get through it, but you won't be you anymore. You won't have your sense of humor. You won't have a sense of self, and it'll just be sad and depressing and awful. And you'll laugh again. And I would go, I'm laughing. And then I would laugh like during the thing and go, okay, that's just nervous laughter or depressed laughter or too many glasses of wine laughter. And sometimes it was. And then sometimes it was just like in the beginning, when I'm eating the chips in the graveyard looking for a place to bury Scott. And my mother's like, don't drip chips on the dead people. And that's funny. And it made us laugh. Or Scott's cousin doing the Jeffersons sing along that I knew nothing about at the funeral. And that made everyone laugh. And Scott did that at funerals. He made people feel better about things, or I said this to someone before. I imagine, and I don't know about your mom's funeral, but that I've never been to a funeral where something didn't happen that at least distracted you. Like someone that nobody liked showed up and you went, why is she here? Or like somebody said the wrong thing, or someone dropped their shoe, or it just whatever. They brought the wrong potato salad, whatever it was. A thing happens. And I think that focusing on all those things got me to where I am today, which is to say, I know that I'm okay. it's never going to be okay that he died. That's never going to be okay. I've made peace with the fact that it happened because I can't do anything about that. But that's what I've learned, that I wasn't full of it when I said I could do it.
Right. No, I'm in total agreement with you that I think the biggest piece of advice that I gave myself, and I now give to other people who are having a hard time, is that you're never going to there's no such thing as, this will be over. It's never going to be over. It's just you get better at understanding and utilizing your time to understand why this happened, because you may not even get the answers, right?
Absolutely.
When you're going through a tragedy. Why was it important for you, though, to write this book and really put that lens on it, that this is a book that is written by a Black person and not a Black book?
Yes. And it's interesting because since I wrote and before the book came out, another book called From Scratch by Tim B. Locke came out, which is amazing. Do you know the book?
No, I know the name. name.
And it's a book written by an African-American woman who married a white guy and he died, and she writes about the aftermath. But it's a completely different book because everyone else gets the chance. How many movies and books are there that are similar, but everyone gets the chance, but they're spinning it? Her book is also a travelogue. It's amazing. Her husband was Italian from Italy, and in the book, she goes to Italy with their child in the time after he dies of cancer to be reconnected with the place where they met, to reconnect her daughter to his family, and to connect through food and family, some sense of getting through the grief, which is a completely different book than the book I wrote. But I think some people would go, well, it's two books about Black widows and a white dude and whatever, but it's different. At the time that I wrote my book, that I started the book, I didn't know about her book. And I did a lot of research because they ask you when you're submitting books for consideration for agents to write comps, like, what is out there that's like this book? Why is my book needed in this place? And I found a lot of grief memoirs, and I found memoirs by people who were Black. But most of the books by people who were Black were specifically about the struggle. They were specifically about a history of racism or of specific sociological things. And they weren't super funny usually. And I did not find a lot of books about a widow who happened to be Black, or a book about aging or dating in your 40s, or changing your economic circumstance. I didn't find those books that just happened to be written by someone who was not white.
Right.
And I was like, I can do that. I'm not white.
Right.
I'll write a book. And I have found so much worth in all those books. Like Joan Didion's Year of Magical Thinking is like the grief memoir. You know, our lives are nothing alike other than that we lost our husbands and we had to figure out how to write our way through it. It's a beautiful book. It's not the same thing. And what I tried to do, when you mentioned, what I had said about it's a book by a Black person, not a Black book, because people would say, so who is this book for?
Right.
It's for people who read books. You know, I mean, I liked, in the same time, I liked the fact that there were things I wrote about that I didn't want to explain too much, because I didn't want it to be for the gaze of people who are not us. So it was just writing to explain everything about being Black to those people. It was sort of like, this is who I am. This is the kind of thing that I do. And this is who I am as a Black person. Like I said in the book, my Black experience is different than yours. It's different from your cousin's who lives in a different place than you. It's different from, I would say, I have a twin sister.
Yep.
And I can't even say that I have the exact same experience as the woman who was born from the same womb as me and raised by my parents at the same time, because we're different people. So all that is to say that I wanted people to meet me where I was in the same way that people met Nia Vardalos when she did My Big Fat Greek Wedding. And they said, I've accepted that this is an experience that I don't know everything about. And she's explaining some stuff, but also she's just going to let some stuff fly.
Right.
And Greek people, my friends who were Greek went, you know. And when I read things on Twitter about like Frankie Beverly, and my friends who are not necessarily of my community will go, who's Frankie Beverly? I go, that's okay. I'll explain it. But I like that the people like on Twitter, they don't explain who Frankie Beverly is. They just go, and then your uncle was in the yards dancing before I let go. And be like,
absolutely.
That's what I wanted. And I wanted people, because when I watched my Big Fat Greek Wedding, it was important enough to me that I looked it up. I said, well, I don't understand what this thing is. Let me look it up. And I think that hopefully in my book, people go, what is she talking about? Hood adjacent? What?
Right.
What that is.
Well, I think that's how people, you know, when you're associated and become exposed to cultural references, colloquialisms, etc., it really is an opportunity to just learn a bit more about the person, about their community. But then also, grief is a universal thing, right?
Absolutely.
This is something that is part of the human condition. And I kind of wanted to touch on denial, right? Yes. One of the quotes that really kind of jumped out at me as I was reading, let me read it here. Denial is a hell of a drug. And I kept thinking, it sure is. It's a hell of a drug when it comes to changing your life, when it comes to getting into the gym, whatever medium you may be trying to jump into, but particularly when it comes to grief and loss. What about denial for you actually worked in your advantage? Were there any aspects of the shock and the fear and the avoidance that actually kind of pushed you through?
Oh, yeah. And I think, and I put some of this in the book, I think that the denial and the shock initially helped me be able to do things that if I was really aware and had it really broken through exactly like in the first couple hours, first couple days after he died, I would have been like, I'm just going to go cry now. Y'all figure it out. I wrote about the gentleman that I interviewed years ago who let me interview him about his wife dying and said, listen, I know that I'm in shock because I want to do this because I'd like to tell people about her. But if you call me 3 hours from now, I will really upset and I'll be destroyed and I won't be able to help. So I really think things like picking up the phone and calling people and saying, look, Scott died, and saying the words. Because once I was conscious of it, I couldn't say it. I couldn't say my phone died. I used to say my battery is needing a charge or something. You know, I would just make stuff up. I would just basically go 0%, help me. You know, that was.
So even the word dying was
dying and dead. But I powered through having to do it, having to, you know, in those first couple hours, you know, even like I write about not remembering who I called and that my friend showed up at my house. And I thought she just showed up because we were supposed to go walking. She goes, no, you called me and told me that Scott had died. And I was like, I have no memory of that phone call.
Right.
But my brain kind of like, I talk about put you in the bubble wrap and went, okay, do what you need to do to get through this. And that's really all I could do.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, by the time people got to me and were able to be the buffer, that was helpful, because then I could just go. But then you can't completely, because like with your mom, I'm sure you still have to be in some way the person who told you where to put the chicken and greeted people when they came into the funeral and called people and was the acceptor of the I'm so sorries. And you can't do that if you're lying on the floor.
This is very true. There were many things that spoke to me about, just kind of surviving the day and surviving the circumstances around it. I think that there were moments where, for myself, it took me a year to sleep in my bed, for example. Took me an entire year to do that, which for someone who's never really experienced any kind of anxiety or anything like that at that time, that was just shocking for me, But I kind of want to touch on something that you brought up, which is support, right? Yeah. So in the book, you talk a bit about a lot of your friends, folks that kind of stood out to me, your sister Lynn, Jay, and then of course your ride or die, Lauren.
Lauren, yes. I hope all of them are watching. I hope they're watching.
Talk to us about some of the support and how that support really helped you, and why it's important to have support systems when you're in any kind of tragedy.
Okay, I will say this because someone said, well, how do you get all the support? And I go, live your life like a person that people want to be friends with. And then when something bad happens to you, hopefully they'll show up. Right. In that moment, you can't go, God, I wish I had been nicer to people and they wanted to come and hang out with me.
Right.
And you don't do that just so it's not a quid pro quo. I'm being nice to you, okay? So when a tragedy happens, you will show up and bring a cake. But I think that I have really amazing friends, and so many of those friends have been my friend for a very long time. And they just, like, when I said people just showed up, like literally that night when my friend Melanie just was there in my living room, because I didn't even know that my sister had left the house. She left the house and got her from or she took a cab. I don't know. People just showed up, and Nikki came, and Jason, said, I'll come when everybody leaves. And like Lauren literally was there. And I put in the book that she came, she didn't even answer the phone. And I kept calling, and her husband was like, oh, someone's calling. That she never, ever said, this is too much. No one in my family ever said, even when it was clear that it was getting too much and they need to go back to their lives or whatever, they never said that. They never said this is too much. And I hope I never have to have anything happen in my life that's bad. Yeah. Where I have to. I mean, all those people gathered like right before the book came out, and I did this event on Palm Beach at the Colony Hotel, which is where we got married. It was the same. It was our 10th anniversary weekend. Instead of celebrating my anniversary, I was being interviewed on stage by James Patterson, which is cool. I wish that Scott had been there, because I know he's somewhere going, I'm missing all this. Like, you missed stuff. But all those people, they all came back. Jason came back, and Lauren was there, and my sister was there, and Melanie was there. The only one who could make it was Nikki, but everybody showed up. Yeah. And it was it's tempting to say, oh, that means I'm an awesome person. I don't think it does. It means that those people love me, and I'm awesome because I'm loved by those people.
I love that. I mean, the ride or dies are your ride or dies, your bays, your close friends, the fam bam. These are people that they're going to show up regardless, right?
I have so many friends, like my friend Kim, who's in the book, the one who sort of was like, this is what we're doing. And we went, okay, this is what we're doing. We've always talked about, if somebody calls you and you go, be outside at 3:00, stand there. Okay, I'm gonna be there. I don't know where we're going. Hopefully it's not illegal. But you just kind of show up for people, and it's like, I'll worry about what it's about later.
Isn't that the simplest thing a person can do in someone else's life? These are not things that are hard things to do. It doesn't take a big plan to show up in someone's life. I kind of wanted to shift a little bit and touch on the anger portion, right?
Yes.
So, anger, we're talking about frustration, we're talking about hesitation. talk to us a little bit about giving yourself permission to be angry because this happens, but also be angry at the fact that there were attributes, and you talk about this in the book of Scott taking a little bit better care of health.
It's it's one of those things where as a woman, you're told if you're angry as a woman, well, I'm not going to say the word, but you know what word I'm referring to, or you're mean, or you're selfish, or how dare you, and why can't you just whatever. And if you're a man, it's passion and it's dedication, and he's being authentic, whatever that. Right. So I knew that when I wrote the book, I had to be honest. If I was like, so if I'm going to do this, because there's nothing worse than reading a memoir and knowing that someone took a giant red marker through all the interesting things. Yeah. And I'm like, why am I reading this? I'm not a celebrity. No one cares about me. And I wasn't going to write things that were like people's business. Like, do you watch Queen Sugar?
I do.
I wasn't going to be Nova and write all of my family secrets. I don't watch Queen Sugar. Literally, when my book was coming out, and that there was basically this show called Queen Sugar, this woman who writes, who's amazing, but she's very much, I'm writing my truth. And she writes every nasty secret of everyone in her family, and she doesn't tell them. Right. So she puts the book out, and suddenly when the book is out, she's like trying to hide copies of the book, and they're like, oh, no. And they'll read it, and she's like, but I was writing about my truth. So I let everyone who had a significant part in my book got their chapter before I even turned it in, because I wanted it. And there's some things that didn't wind up in the book, but at least those people know that it's out there in the world. And I wrote about it. And I tell that story to say that I knew I wanted to be honest about things, and anger, one of the stages of grief, and something that's super valid, because it is. Being angry at a dead person is really fruitless. True. But understanding that you are angry, well, I'll say staying angry at a dead person is fruitless. Understanding that you were angry at them for whatever reason, so you can move on because you were not dead, and because you have to keep going, and you got to talk to their family, and you still love them, and you got to raise their child and live in the house and like not burn all their stuff. That's not, we were making out when he died. I mean, we were literally in a really good place when he died. So it wasn't that we weren't like mad at each other. Right. At that moment. But the anger around, that, you think you're immortal. And when you're in your mid 40s, even though you have some health issues, unless he'd not been hospitalized, it wasn't like, he didn't have like a morphine drip or whatever. It wasn't the kind of thing where, even though he knew some of these things, it wasn't like this is imminent, or if you eat this cheesesteak, you're one cheesesteak away from a heart attack. No one said that. So you just don't know. And so you assume that you're okay. So when your wife gives you a dirty look as you're ordering the cheesesteak, and you're like, ugh. So when you die, and your wife is going, because of course, we're women, so we blame ourselves, or we say, and I'm a control freak. So I'm like, what could I have done? Could I have done anything? And you're like, you feel like you have to save the person and you can't. And it's like, one of my cousins wasn't able to come to the funeral because she'd had a heart attack right before he died, and she's fine, but she wasn't able to come. And she called me. And she said, so how you doing? And I said, well, I feel like I know what it's like in those movies when the person's like just manic and angry, and they dig up the dead person and they reanimate them, and then they become a zombie and they kill everybody. And my cousin went, girl, you can't do that. You go to all these fancy parties. How you going to take that with you to a party? You can't have that with you on beach. How do you take a zombie with you? Right. It was so ridiculous, but it was acknowledging, yes, that it was a frustrating, awful situation that I had no control over. And I got to be angry and bitter and desperate about it, understanding that I could not actually bring him back to life and put him in a thing and take him with me to the Ritz-Carlton. Yeah, I mean,
there's something that there were so many delicious like nuggets and quotes that were in the book. One of the things that spoke to me, and it's something that's so simple, but just to read the quote directly, you can only make decisions on information you have at the moment, and it doesn't help anyone to beat yourself up over it. I just wish that we had more time. So my question on that is, do you find that you now focus more on how much time you may have, or is your focus more on how you spend your time?
It is both. It is that at 49, I just turned 49 last month.
All right.
Thank you. I'm very conscious of that I am not immortal. I'm very conscious of the fact I bought myself a blood pressure thingy, and I'm on Zoom, Noom. I'm on Zoom. I'm on Noom right now. Doing that thing, trying to lose that weight. Cause I was like, I was trying to do it myself, and I lost weight, and it's in the book. I gained a lot of weight, and I'd lost about 20 pounds of that. And then I gained like 10 of it back. So it's kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
And now I'm back down, getting back towards where I want to be. But that's not just about, wearing a certain thing. That's about not wanting to die. And the fact that, being an African-American, I am predisposed genetically to high blood pressure and heart disease and all those things. Even though I'm vegan, I still have those things. If I ate ribs every day, it would be even worse. And so I try to be honest about the fact your husband dying, kind of like, if anything's going to say, okay, you are not immortal, it's that. And so you can't deny it. You can't say, well, this is something I'll worry about later. I also do want to be happy in the time that I have. And a lot of that comes into not worrying about what people think of what you do.
Right.
I wrote about, I think I wrote about this about a year and a half after Scott died. I was like, I'll do something stupid. And I hired a matchmaker, and nothing came of that, like relationship wise, but it was really helpful to be forced to sit across from a person and talk. Right. And I wrote about it, and I had people emailing me at the newspaper going, it's too soon. And did you even love your husband? I'm like, the heck? And so learning that those people are dumb, and it's okay for them to have opinions, but they don't have to tell you about them. If they do, you don't have to care about them. True. I don't care about what those people think of me, and I don't, because I'm not going to let what some stranger say. Because he was arguing with me, and this guy was like, I'm a social worker, and I work with a lot of single mothers, and when their men friends die or leave or go to jail or whatever it is, they date too fast, and it's bad for their kids. So I think you should not date for a long time. Be a mother. And I said, sir, thank you very much. It's been a year and a half. I know it probably doesn't seem that way to you since you were not in my house and you don't know me, but thank you. He goes, no, I think it's too soon. I'm thinking, delete.
I love that. Listen, one of the things that you talk about in the book really kind of focused in on, again, everyone giving kind of solicited advice, unsolicited advice, forgetting that what might work for them may not be the thing that works for you. And so I just kind of wanted to touch on your mother, right? Yes. So your mother sounds like a really, really wonderful, loving,
she's kind, great. And actually, her top. I bought this and I gave it to her. This is by a local designer, Amanda Perna, who I bought this to do an event. I think it probably was going to wear this to this event. And I just gave it to my mother because it looked better on her. So, yes, she is real in a way that I don't think I would have been able to quantify. And this is like the Hallmark movie of my life. I always loved her, and I always liked her, and I always liked spending time with her. But this experience has made us so much closer in a way because we really get each other as people, the people that we are now. I mean, I hadn't lived in the same house with her since I was 22, 23 maybe. And so she moved in with us when I was 44, so that's a long time. Mm-hmm. And now, she just... when she gave me advice about things, it's a lot of things. She's my mom.
Right.
She also is a widow.
Mm-hmm.
We also lost my dad together in different ways. We lost Scott together, but in different ways. And she would never, even if it's not always exactly how I felt, or the advice is not always the right advice. She would never say anything to me that she didn't think she knew or felt from a very authentic place. And I think that sometimes when people give advice, sometimes it's from where they are, and sometimes it's like, I have to say something. This person lost somebody, so you have to say something. So you say something about time and the wheel and the eternity and all that stuff, which isn't helpful to me. I mean, I'm sure there are people that it's helpful to, because people wouldn't continue to say it, but maybe just no one ever said to them, don't say that. Or unless you know exactly how it is that that specific person deals with the afterlife and spirituality and things of that nature, just say, I'm sorry for your loss, unless you know them. I mean, I had friends who knew me very well and were able to say, how are you feeling about those things? And didn't try to make it a hit and run, Scott has finished his cycle around the sun BS.
Yes, which when I read that statement in the book, I just kept thinking, this is so very true. But going back to what you said, the thing about wisdom is that it's earned, right? So when you're sharing wisdom, it's coming from a place of earned experiences. It is. Know-how and wherewithal. Touching back on your mother, though, talk to us a little bit about like what kinds of things or mantras or ways of living has she given you? Maybe share one or two that you grasp onto.
She often says, because I'll come in like bizarre times of the night, and I'll just start, blah, and she'll go, little girl, breathe, breathe. And that's my best team street invitation. And it's true, because not only am I not breathing the entire sentences, blah, 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 blah,
right.
It's also, I'm not thinking about what I'm saying. Maybe I'm nervous about what I'm saying. So I'm like, go. And I just say it, or I haven't really thought about it. And maybe it's not even as big a thing as I thought it was, but she just it's like, you're literally going to die if you don't breathe. That's a frequent thing. Also, she just kind of like, sometimes when I'm like getting like this, and she'll just hug me. She'll just hug me, like, and sometimes I think it's like subduing the prisoner. Like, let's make sure the crazy person is restrained. But no, that sometimes you just need that. And I know that in this time of social distancing and stuff, those of us who don't have anyone to hug and have that human touch from, I can't imagine. I'm so fortunate to have that, to have my mother and to have my son, to just grab. And somebody's like, ah! But she just, often she'll come back to a conversation. Like that, which is a way of being wise. Like the next day she'll say, so listen. And she remembers everything. She's a psych nurse and a social worker, and she's been a therapist. She's done all these things. So she's really good at remembering these things.
Right.
But she does it in a way that's both, it's very wise, but it's not clinical, and it's not accusatory or whatever. And she's just really good at like a therapist will go, let's explore that, what you said.
Yeah. Let's unpack that.
Your mother handing you coffee or a cookie or something.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. I love it. I love it. I love it. I wonder, just kind of touching on bargaining and depression, right?
Oof.
So those are tricky ones.
Yeah.
Because you could speak to it on the spiritual level, talking to God or whoever it is that you believe in. You could also speak to the space of being stuck. So talk to us a little bit about those two things and how you kind of work through those stages.
The bargaining thing never made sense to me in the context of the stages of grieving being about death, until I understood that when they were written, they were really about someone who has been diagnosed with a terminal illness.
Yes.
Because in that context, the bargaining of, if I do this, will you save me? If I appeal to God or a higher power to do charity work or stop drinking or start cheating on my wife or like exercise every day, or I'm never going to touch a piece of fried potato ever again. Right. So that makes sense. when you're dead, unless of course you are digging them up to make a zombie thing to take to the ball with you,
Right, right.
It's happened. But with me, that the bargaining was like, was this because of me? And did I do something? Am I doomed? Are bad things going to happen to me? So is this a warning? Is this like a Job thing where something happened? Although Job didn't do anything either. Job just showed up and the devil messed with him, which is, I have so many questions about that. But is this the thing where bad things are just happening to you either on purpose or they just happen, and you go, well, what can I do to throw into the universe to make sure they never happen to me again? And I did that because there were moments where I thought, okay, the adoption's not going to go through, or I would, this is going to go horribly with my mother and I'm going to be out in the street. I mean, and none of those things happened. And I had the power to make sure I did everything I had to do for the adoption, and then someone else was going to decide it. But I had I was the person that controlled what happened on my end of my relationship with my mother.
Right.
So understanding that was very helpful because you cannot help when people die.
This is true.
But you can make sure that before people die, you have a good relationship with them. You can make sure that you have your ducks in a row for things like life insurance and practical stuff like that. And I think that realizing that I couldn't do anything about it, all I could do was just move forward, was very helpful. The depression thing was hard because I am, I'm like human jazz hands, So I'm usually upbeat. I mean, I have my moments. I like depressing songs. I was like very much into all the Gloria Estefan songs in the 80s where somebody was leaving her and she was crying and stuff. I love that stuff. It's my favorite. Sad. I have all kinds of sad playlists, but I am not that kind of depression. Although honestly, it started when my dad died. That this world is upended in a way that I cannot get back. And this person who is part of my life in so many ways, in so many huge ways, is gone. I can't do anything about it. And then you start to think, once, because we have to be in charge of something. What could I have done? What could I do? I would call my mother and go, was I a good daughter? And she'd go, oh my God, you were just, stop it, and you make things about you. You make things about, what you could do. Therapy was so important to me.
Absolutely.
I had been in therapy before Scott died, not at that moment, but I had had therapy in the past, and I knew I was going to have therapy. I knew that the therapy of reestablishing a religious worship thing, and I still don't go every week. Well, nobody goes anywhere right now, but I go frequently, and I have a relationship with a church. I had stopped that for a while after my dad died because I was mad.
Yeah.
But those things were helpful to me. Writing, like I said, was so therapeutic. And honestly, just being able to speak out loud, like I would have these like Lieutenant Dan fights with God, like Forrest Gump. I'm sorry, everything, folks, is a pop culture reference.
Right.
Sorry, but I would have these fights with God. I remember I can see myself, and I felt so stupid when I was doing it, but I was like, I just had to, where I was like sunk next to the floor, next to the chair that Scott used to sit in his Archie Bunker recliner. And I was like, and Sally Field and Steel McNally, I'm like, why? It was right. And I'm sobbing and I'm like, I'm going to wake people up. I don't care. And I looked up and I had neither been struck by lightning.
Right.
Or had a heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
There was no bright light. I didn't go, oh, it's all great. But I got it off of my chest and I thought, it's okay to feel that way. It's okay.
Absolutely.
Going back to the anger part, it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be, that's how we're made. We're made to try to deal with the horrible things that happen to us in the best way that we can.
Absolutely. And not hold on to it. I think that's the big part for me was, to your point, right? There was this level in conversation that I kept having with God around, why is this happening? And why would this happen to the strongest person we've ever known? The most important person who's done everything she could to make sure that her kids got to where they needed to be, and weren't fulfilling some sort of stereotype, for example.
Yes.
Yes. One of the most powerful quotes that I just keep staring at it and looking at it. But it spoke volumes to me. And let me read it here. I believe in magic and in God and in miracles. I want a miracle. Please give me a miracle. There's something there with I believe in magic, because when you see the person that you love the most pass away, there's a spectrum of sadness that comes across you, because you believe that person is this superhero that nothing happened to them, because why would talk to us a little bit about that statement and how are you feeling about it now?
And I still do believe in magic. I still believe, but magic doesn't happen the way that you think it's going to all the time.
Right.
Magic doesn't believe that nothing bad will ever happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
And everything that you ask for is going to be granted. And that's the thing that I had to, it's the whole, like, when bad things happen to good people situation, you go, but I'm a very good person.
Mm-hmm.
Usually 95%, 87%. And I felt like, why would this happen? And so you are used to read fairy tales that bad things happen to bad people and good things happen to good people. Bad things happen to good people until something miraculous happens. The prince comes, the dwarves save you, the dragon gets home, whatever. And then you realize, and here's my pretty woman thing. Sometimes you have to save yourself.
True.
And you have to save the other person. And then maybe you got to, like, help the dragon punch his way out too, but I believe that strength comes from somewhere. And I believe in everything. I believe that God is real. And I believe that magical things happen that we don't know how they happen and we can't explain, but they just sort of, like, appear, and that there's a timing to it. And that miracles can be, like, I've repaired relationships since this that I had not repaired before.
That's awesome.
And one of two of them I know this happened, and it happened to both me and the person, and we kind of had to, like, find our way back to each other that way. And then I have more patience. I have more patience for a lot of things. I have less patience for a lot of things. I have more patience for humans that, you look at that person in the DMV line or in the McDonald's drive-thru, you go, I don't know what's happening to them.
Mm-hmm.
Something, the worst thing in the world could have happened in the day, and they still have to show up and go to work because they had to. And maybe it's not about me. Maybe they gave side eye and it wasn't about me. They're really trying to breathe their way through the end of the shift, and they're counted by seconds and they want to go home. I have less patience for, like, I mentioned before when we were talking about, people telling you when you should do this and what's appropriate and whatever. I don't care about those people. And I have a lot less patience for, this is in the book, things I don't want to do. Like, what people would literally say in the first couple of weeks, do you want to go whatever? I would go, no, I don't. And that was survival. Like, my brain was incapable of pretending I wanted to be. But now I've started I say no to almost every committee that I'm offered.
Yeah.
Because I just don't have time and I don't want to. I these things are wonderful. It's just, in my life, I have a full-time job in a newspaper. I have a full-time job writing and then promoting this book, full-time job as a mom, now as a paraeducator, as a person who's trying to work out a lot and not die, and just a woman who likes to experience stuff that's not an obligation. And with all those things, it's nice that people think of you and want you to be on their committees and do this stuff. But lately, like the last several months, I have said no to so many things that either were not incredibly important to me or that weren't promotional for me.
Right.
That's my job. And I don't feel bad about it.
You shouldn't feel bad about it. I mean, there's a level of self-awareness that whether you're going through a hard time, a tragedy, whatever the case, a loss of a job, whatever the case may be, there's a level of self-awareness that goes into understanding what's best for you. And a lot of this book kind of also touches on that aspect of moving from how tragedy starts to the latter stages of that. Yeah. And with that, I kind of want to throw out there to everyone that's live streaming right now that we're getting ready to get into a question and answer portion. So please feel free to throw your questions out there and we'll see if we can get them answered. But before we do that, we have about a minute before we jump into that, Leslie. Tell us 2 things that people should know about Scott.
Scott was, without a doubt, the smartest person I've ever met in my life. And it's funny because when you would meet him, he would seem like this kind of goofy, happy-go-lucky, hey, he would like make word puns like a dad joke or whatever. But he did that to make people feel at home. He did that to disarm people. I have a friend who said that we would go to Polo and I would write about Polo and the celebrities and stuff. And Scott would go stand next to him and laugh. And when Scott died, he said, I remember Scott as a person who said, I know both of us feel weird in this situation. Let's just laugh and feel comfortable with each other. And then he disarmed people. Also, he was joyous about things that he didn't know about. He had never been to Polo. I didn't really either. But like he was like a sports guy. He was a sports guy. He liked a lot of other things, but that's the thing that he liked. But he went to concerts with me. He went to the opera with me. He didn't love the opera, but he went. He said, can we go somewhere? Oh, yeah, we're fine. But he did things because they were important to me. And he did things because he was hungry about experiences. Like I said, it wasn't guaranteed to like everything.
Right.
He wasn't afraid to give it a shot. And he wasn't afraid to look stupid.
Absolutely.
And that made him look great because he was fearless about this. I'm going to throw it in there. And if I get a pratfall, then maybe you'll laugh.
Wow. It just seemed like he was when I was reading the book, I just kept thinking, this is the person when you walk into the room, you're there with him and he throws a drink out to you and, he can talk to you about sports or jump in about any cultural experience that either he's interested in. So, I loved it. I loved reading this book. I recommend everybody to grab a copy because it is worth it. And so I think we're going to, and look at my book here. It has all this.
Okay. Great.
Okay, so let me throw out this first question from Camille Corpus. I hope I'm saying your name right. I lost my husband and my mom around the same time in 2018, and I've been writing about my experience since then. What advice do you have for someone who would like to write a book similar to yours?
And first of all, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry about both of your losses, and I'm glad that you're here. I would say the first thing to do is just write, and not worry about the structure, not worry about do these words make sense together. Just write in your heart. I mean, the first chapter I literally wrote maybe a month after Scott died, which was like I literally just been in the graveside, and now I'm writing about it. Because A, it's therapeutic. B, if you're trying to write a book about it, you need to get it out there. And it might take a completely different shape than you think. And I don't know if you've ever written professionally or written a book or whatever. But some of the most beautifully raw things are the things that you just kind of did. And so my advice would be to just be honest about how you feel, not to censor yourself. I mean, I wrote things that never made it in the book. Like, I hate this person. They suck. I'm going to punch them in the face. And I knew that wasn't, and most of it I deleted before I even showed it to anybody. There were things that happened like at the hospital that were that chapter was a lot longer because I had grievances for everybody.
Right.
And I took most of that out. You got the gist of it, and I didn't need to go into all of it. But don't censor yourself. Just write it down and see how it goes for you. But good luck to you. And if you have any questions, you can find out how to email me. You can go to my website, lesliegracejudah.com, and my contact information is there.
Thank you, Camille. Let's take another question. Let me see. Anthony G. Thank you so much for coming. I had a question. What was the inspiration behind your book cover?
Okay, this book cover, it's so funny. I have the geniuses at Little Brown and Hachette found this. We had all these conceptual covers that were like, I had this idea that didn't come out funny at all. That was like, wouldn't it be, because I wanted to say, okay, deaf, but funny. So I was like, wouldn't it be like, they drew it up actually, and were very nice about when I was like, no, it was my fault. There was a limo and a hand sticking out of the limo holding a martini. But that seemed like a beach read, like the Black Widow was the 25-year-old who married the rich guy, poisoned his drink, and was spending his money. So
right.
That was bad. And once again, that was my idea. It was bad. Their idea, and they said, we'll come up with something. And I think that it was because everything about it doesn't necessarily say widow, but it says something bad has happened I don't want to deal with. It says black because look at her beautiful hair.
Right.
This was stock art. This wasn't even like a photo shoot, but look at that. People, is that you? I'm like, my hair don't do that. I wish it did. But, and this, it's kind of like, it says, it looks like a comic book almost.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something it's something very eventful about it, but it's not tragic or sad about the type. Even they did an amazing job of it. They've done an amazing job.
I love that. Love that. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you.
Okay, next question is coming from Tracy Capiello. I hope I'm saying your name right. How can we nominate someone else to handle those things when it comes to like accepting sorry, sad looks, and etc.?
You know what I did? I kind of like, because I got married 5 years before, and most of my bridesmaids and stuff were able to come to the funeral. I kind of did what I did when I got married, where I just kind of delegated. My sister laughs all the time that she said the day before my wedding, I went, okay, I'm officially out of this. Y'all figure it all out. I'm the bride now. I literally had 9 bridesmaids and my friend Jason. So I had a very large bridesmaid party and all my family. And I was like, handle it. And I think that same kind of thing came, because I said to my sister was my point person. I said, listen, I don't know what's going on. I really don't know what my brain is doing any one time. And she goes, I got it. And she find the person that you trust, find the person that you know is not, and knows, and the person that you trust, the person whose opinions are like yours. So they're probably not going to say, you know, Leslie loves that song and she doesn't. You know, she hates that. You know, someone who knows you well enough to know what it is you want. And I would just kind of grab people and say, "Can you remember to tell someone something?" And they go, "Got it." And I have so many really capable friends. But yeah, I think, and I wrote this in something too. Find a person who is a point person that you would have do anything, like maybe who was your bridesmaid or your plan your baby shower, someone who's good at stuff like that and good at delegating. And who also is good at being authoritative because everyone loved me. Just like when my dad died, everyone loved my mom. So everyone had opinions about things. And my mother wasn't always able to be present. So they would come to us and say, we've decided we're going to whatever. And we would go, no. Because we know that wasn't either what the plan was. There was a plan. Or we knew that was something that wasn't necessarily going to be something that she would like. Or that my dad would have liked. So we were able to, because we were the daughters, go, yeah, no, thank you so much. But no, we would love to have you. Do you have other flowers? Whatever. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for helping. Because you want to make sure that people feel and know that you appreciate that they don't have to do any of this.
Absolutely.
You know, very quick story. I am a vegetarian. I was a vegetarian. I'm vegan. And at the time, I had never recreationally eaten pork. So my father died in Little Rock, Arkansas. So pork is a very big thing. So my mother was finishing her master's degree in nursing at the time. And she was gone and everyone was in and out of the house, whatever. So the church members come over and this lady knocks on the door and she's so proud of this dish. And she says, "This is a pork butt." And I don't know anything about that. I go, "Thank you." And she expects like pork butt.
Right.
And she looks at me and she goes, "No, it's a pork butt." I was the wrong person to do this at the time. And I said, "And I'm going to tell my mother about thank you so much." So she's really confused, slightly insulted. I don't know why. She closes the door and I yell upstairs, including to my Jewish husband who did eat ham, and say, "There's a pork butt?" And literally everybody in the house started coming down that way. They were opening drawers and opening things and knifing stuff and whatever. And like, because they knew it's a really special cut of meat. Takes a long time to make. It's expensive. It's a whole pork butt. It's really great. And so my mother called her friend and said, "Thank you so much, Sister So-and-so, for bringing the pork butt." My daughter's a vegetarian. She didn't. And she goes, "Oh, okay. Nope. Say no more. Say no more." But I was in most things the person to be, not in the pork butt situation. But in most things, I was glad to be that person. Just find that person and trust them. And they'll come back later and tell you things that went wrong.
Absolutely.
Like pork butt.
I think we'll take one last question before we decide to close out here. Ooh, from Molly Spellman, what are healthy things you do to cope on the bad days?
Oh, wow. Let myself cry. During this isolation period, I have found more, and probably because I'm talking a lot about this, because I've written the book and promoting it, and so it brings these things up. I have had moments where I just talk to Scott. I just lie in the dark and I talk to him, and that's been really helpful to me.
Yeah.
And I feel him in his presence. I don't hear like his voice, like in a movie, like, ah, da, 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 da. But
right.
I feel him. And that's very helpful to me. Also, just letting yourself feel what you feel and not telling yourself that it's too far. You're too far past it to feel this way. So it's wrong and you have to pretend you don't. That's not how grief works. That's not how hearts work. And that's not how humans work.
Right.
And giving yourself a freaking break, I think, is the most healthy thing that I've ever done. Go on walks by yourself. Don't be afraid to get away from the people in your house and say, I'm claiming this 10-minute walk around the block for me. Take a bike ride. I love my bike.
Right.
I find that solitude, either to do something in or nothing at all, and allowing myself to be at peace in that, that's the healthiest thing.
Thank you. Thank you so much to all of the questions, all of the comments. Leslie, you're going to close us out with one statement around the last stage of grief, which is acceptance.
Oh my gosh. That's about accepting not only that the loss happened, but accepting where you are in the loss. It's about saying you don't have all the answers. It's about accepting that you are not a perfect person, that you will cry, that you will still have moments 5 years, 10 years, 15 years later where you go, the heck was that all about? But it's accepting the fact that you are healed, that you're healing, you are loved, and you are able to get through this because that person loved you and you love them enough to miss them. And that's how I've been able to do it. And accepting that there are things that you can't change. The only thing you can change is the here and now and the future. And you got to go from there.
Well, with that, Leslie, we thank you so much for joining us today. I thank you so much for sharing so much about yourself, for this amazing book that I hope that everyone is looking into grabbing for themselves. And to everyone that joined the live stream, and to all of the future folks that'll tune into this link, because this is a recorded session, I send you nothing but light, love, hugs, and positivity for the rest of the year. Thank you again.
Thank you.